Hello and welcome to all, and for those who just join us, you will discover a fantastic booth with fantastic people, of course, with fantastic innovations. I'm Cristina Balanos, delighted to be presenting and moderating. You're very concentrated right now. Are you in a good shape? Yeah. If you're very happy, I can see some faces who are here, so really happy to have you. I want to hear some noise if you are really energized to be here on Sanofi's booth. A little better, it's getting better, yes, thank you very much. So let's get into the heart of our matter, and our topic for now is large language models in research and development, search and design in chemical spaces. So what is it exactly, and how does it change the game? And I can tell you it does change the game. Please welcome now the R&D Data and Computational Science Manager, Sven Jager.
Thank you, Christina.
And welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the last day, and I'm really happy to be here. And yeah.
The last day for you,
yeah, it's the last day for me.
Yes,
yeah,
we have tomorrow also.
I had a talk I think on Wednesday, Thursday, and now it's the last one. So it's really great speaking here at VivaTech, and it's a really nice momentum.
And it's going to be a fantastic session as well. So let's start with a definition of large language models. What is it exactly?
So, large language models. I think everybody knows these days large language models. That's kind of great, because typically when you need to do presentations in a data science topic, you need to explain a lot. But thanks to ChatGPT, everybody knows what large language models are. We are using them at home as a chatbot. They're helping us with our emails. They're helping us with our data. We are calling these kind of models text-based large language models, classically. In Sanofi, however, we have also a different kind of language model that we are considering as expert AI. These are special language models for our modalities, talking about proteins, talking about small molecules, mRNA. Last year we had our codon bird presented here, which is a language model that can design mRNA. So these models are different because they don't use text. They're using more this kind of language of life.
And tell me, what's the difference between text-based LLMs and molecular LLMs you just mentioned earlier?
Yeah. For the text-based LLMs, the main difference is the training data. That means like you're training these data on a huge corpus of books, articles, the whole internet actually. So the model itself, which is a neural network, and this model will remember and use actually the content that it's trained on to give you responses. In contrast, our molecular language models, they are trained on sequences, for example, like protein sequences, DNA sequences, mRNA sequences. So they're never seeing human language. But these models are excellent actually in predicting new pharmaceuticals. So this is a really nice thing. So we have actually these language-based architectures for these models, and they can be reused for this molecular task representing molecules. We have these two worlds. There are, of course, two things to address here. Of course, a molecular LLM cannot be used as a chatbot, because you cannot chat with something that only knows molecules. And a chat LLM is a very terrible chemist when you, for example, want to design new compounds.
And how does LLMs help, actually?
So LLMs in general, and this is kind of a cool thing about the LLMs, they have pattern recognition abilities. That means, like, for example, when you are discussing with ChatGPT and giving them data, they are able actually to find patterns in data. Also, and you know this also from your own usage at home with ChatGPT, you can ask actually a question, and then you can ask back why. And then you are getting a reasoning from the model why you got this answer. So you have not only this kind of abilities, you would have also a reasoning and explainability ability in the model included. This explainability ability is important, of course, also when you would, for example, design molecules. And another thing what is pretty great about these models is you can actually predict. You can use data, small data sets. We are in data science, we are calling this few-shot learning or many-shot learning. So you can give a small example of a problem you want to predict to your language model, and the language model can manage actually to do a prediction without that you are doing further training on it. And that's kind of the thing. It is really revolutionary because you can use something actually without even engaging with a data scientist or a long compute job.
So tell us, to make things more concrete, do you have any use cases? How does it work exactly?
Yeah. I will give a quick example, but before I'm going into this example, I want to explain a bit where's the drug design problem, because that's, I think, an important background for everybody. So typically when you want to design drugs, you want to find a drug that binds a given target. This is already super difficult because the whole space of molecules that you can address is the universe, and you need to find it. As a chemist, you have this ability. Why do you have this ability? Because you trained your own neural network during school, during your doctorate. You understand chemistry, you understand the functional groups, you understanding electronegativity. You can really design compounds. But what you cannot do is, you cannot sample billions of different compounds to find the right one. So you're having always a narrow search. And that's not the full problem, actually. The problem is even more difficult. Because you're finding a great compound that binds on your target, then you need also to check if this compound is less toxic. How about the distribution abilities of the compound? How about the manufacturing abilities of the compound? So there's a lot of additional parameters you need to check on too. Makes it even more complex. And this is why I'm drawing here a small picture in order to explain it. It looks like searching for a compound is finding a needle in a haystack. But that's also not true. It's actually a couple of haystacks with a lot of needles, because you have a lot of chemical spaces, and in each space you want to find it. So the problem is far more complex, and that's where we put our solution in, where we have actually an agentic AI system based on language model that understand chemistry, that helps actually the chemist to find this needle efficiently and to go beyond actually the capabilities of the human mind, since you can actually sample far higher numbers and search far faster.
Great, and tell us, what makes this new AI generation different from the traditional ones?
Great question. And this is actually a good thing to show how we are actually solving it. And then that's the main difference. Because in Sanofi, we created an experience for the chemist where the chemist can use the same, let's say, user experience that you have in ChatGPT, but for designing compounds. How would you design compounds then? Of course, you need to change the interface a bit. The classical ChatGPT is just a prompting interface. So here you need, of course, also an interface where you can actually draw the molecules. And then you need, of course, a language model underneath that can understand the chemistry too. And that's the innovation that we delivered here. We teached actually the language model to also generate and predict in a chemical space, and creating a small user experience on top. And let's share a quick example on this. And it's actually as easy as I'm showing it here. Unfortunately, I cannot make a live demo, that's why we did a couple of screenshots, but you can use the application similar like you would use ChatGPT. You can ask the LLM what it can do, and it gives you actually the different skills, and you can choose. So we teach the LLM molecular design, molecular search, we teach that reaction analysis, we teach them structural analysis and property prediction, which means like we're using the capabilities of the LLM to be trained on your local data or your drawing and taking your information into account for the new designs. Since it's an agentic system, there are also a lot of important chemical tools available for the language model that the language model can use and get into its context to do better predictions. And if you want to use it, you can simply use it like this. You can draw a molecule, something with a functionality that you're interested in, maybe a core component, maybe a building block. You can upload data from your laboratory where you have first assay experiments, and then the LLM can fetch both, and you can ask the LLM just, hey, on the sequence, on the structures that I gave you, can you create me new compounds? And this is what the LLM is doing. The LLM creates a small space and samples in this space new compounds based on your idea as well as on your preferences, your last conversations, and the data that you uploaded. Like really a generative model where you can talk to. In addition, the model helps you also to visualize the space, so you can see how similar the compounds are. And at the end, and this is something where I'm really proud of what we created here, we taught also the model to understand chemistry and chemical instructions. Think about the model as a small chemical sidekick that can do any kind of modification on a given structure. You're putting a molecular structure into the model, and then you are giving an instruction like replace the hydroxyl group here, and the model understands it and replaces the structure. So it understands really the chemical context, which is a bit magic-like, because it's a completely different modality than text. But how we are doing this? Of course, with a small magic trick here, because you can represent also molecules as small words called smiles. As you can see, it's a very abstract word, but this word can be translated actually in a molecular structure. And with this representation, the ability of the language model comes into play to really learn to replace and map actually these functional groups into a kind of a word world. And that's really nice. So that means not only that you can give the model data and ask him to predict, you can also correct it directly and say to the model, okay, your predictions are great. However, you messed up this functional group, I would like this. Can you change this for the whole set? And then the model helps you and does the conversation. And that's really a nice thing of bridging the gap between chemistry as well as also the chatbot world.
Well, I was going to ask you, we're putting actually our health in your hands, in the hands of technology. How can we make sure it's used properly, that it is safe, basically? Because also, everybody knows that there's hallucinations also with that type of things like ChatGPT as well, you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah, this is of course a super important thing. Safety, specifically the safety from our patients, is very important. However, I have to say one thing here. If you are designing a pharmaceutical with an AI or without an AI, it does not matter. We are going through the same rigorous process of validation as well as testing, as well as also going into clinical trials, as also aligning with the government processes, the FDA, the European Council, in order to get drugs approved. So there's no change in this. However, in Sanofi, responsible AI is very important. We have the RACE program running, where we are also advocating for ethical, fair and responsive use on AI. And for this tool, it holds two. So we have not only measures to actually log and really visualize what the model is doing. On the other hand, we are also doing a lot of testing around different data sets as well as laboratory analysis. The whole model actually itself is tested, published, But on the other hand, and that's the more important thing, you can publish and test models as much as you want. When you are asking me as an expert, I would always say, when you are working with an AI together on a complex task like coding or designing compounds, it is really important that you are also an expert. And that's the human in the loop concept. So here for this application, you would always have a human in the loop, which validates the compounds and give also the expertise. And that helps also with hallucinations. If you know a topic pretty well, the example is here always when you're using, for example, a large language model for coding, and you're a programmer, you're super productive because you know when the model hallucinates and you can correct it directly. When you are a chemist and using our application, it's the same paradigm. The model cannot trick you. You know it. You can give it instruction to fix it again. And that's why it's always important when you're doing complex expert tasks that you have an AI and you are the expert in the loop, and then you are far faster and you have also a far higher chance to get compounds designed with better properties. And at the end, that's the big benefit of it. You're getting compounds with better properties, and better properties means here also less toxicity. Less toxicity means less side effects of a drug. So you're not getting faster drugs, you're also getting better drugs.
So that's good news. Basically, AI is a fantastic tool, but human beings will remain in the loop and to make it safe.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's great. Let's illustrate your insights with a video.
Yes.
Introducing search and design in chemical spaces. Sanofi's revolutionary generative AI solution for early research in drug discovery. Imagine a ChatGPT-like interface that empowers chemists to create new molecules interactively and conversationally. That's exactly what we've built. This AI-powered tool tackles the challenge of designing small molecular compounds in vast chemical spaces. It transforms a process that once took weeks into mere minutes, bridging the gap between preparative medical chemists and computational experts. With features like in-context learning and human-in-the-loop design, our solution guides chemists towards innovative ideas, potentially leading to higher quality molecules. By simplifying workflows and accelerating compound development, we're not just saving time and costs, we're paving the way for faster drug development with fewer side effects. Search and design in chemical spaces embodies Sanofi's AI-first approach, empowering our scientists to deliver better outcomes for patients, faster than ever before.
Just to summarize before we hand over to you, dear audience, if you have any questions. We saw a couple of examples you shared, also quite interesting insights. But if we had to summarize, what are the pros and the cons of using such a very high-level AI, generative AI?
Thank you. Of course, I'm a data scientist, which means like I have a lot of pros, but obviously there are also some cons. But I will start with the pros of using technologies like this. The biggest pro is actually if you're an expert and using a generative model, you have the ability to screen millions of compounds on a computer without actually going into the laboratory, which means you are saving a lot of resources, you are saving experiments, and you are fast. And you can, due to the fact that you can screen millions of compounds, you can actually find a molecule that is better than the one that you would used before, because you have now the opportunity to screen far more of these haystacks in parallel. And that's kind of the thing. You have a probability to have a better molecule at the end. So it's faster and better molecules. The other thing is, you are also empowering a preparative chemist and an expert using the tool. Typically, when you want to do let's say, data science or chemoinformatics project, you need to do this classically, like humans doing projects. You, as a chemist, you need to ask a data scientist to set up a model, set up a compute. You need to meet, you're iterating around parameters around the model. Then you are meeting again, then you are iterating again. And then after a couple of months, you are ending up with a few compounds. With this application, you don't need the data scientist anymore. You can do this yourself. As a chemist without coding experience, you can directly trigger generative design, easily navigate to the complex landscape because of visualization capabilities, and instruct changes when you're seeing that the model is hallucinating. And that empowers really the chemist to be far more productive to find new molecules, and that's a win-win situation. Coming to the cons. Christine already mentioned it, and I think everybody knows it at home when we're using ChatGPT. We have these big hallucination problems of LLMs. When you are talking about LLMs and using LLMs and working with them, I can tell you from my experience, there's always kind of a thing that an LLM and the answers that you are getting are like 90% right and 10% you need to correct. You're never getting a 100% solution. That's something that you need to assume when you're working with AI. If you're an expert, it's great because you can deliver the 10% super fast. However, there's always the risk also that the LLM is creating compounds that are not existing because it understands the pattern of this language, but it does not really understand the spatial reasoning of a structure. And this is also something, when you are a chemist, you can correct it actually. And that's why the human in the loop concept is very, very important. So there's this hallucination problem. Hallucination problem can be solved with the human in the loop, but there's also another different problem when you're working with LLMs. Or I would not say problem, it's actually the times also where we are living in. Training LLMs, working with LLMs is super expensive. You need big machines. When you are looking here at VivaTech, you are seeing this too. We have the GTC here. It means like NVIDIA has an own slot. NVIDIA right now owns the capabilities of training these models. And getting the access to these GPUs is very difficult and also very costly. So it's not really democratized. That means if you want to fine-tune your own model, you need to have a lot of money actually, or a good sponsor. And that's kind of a general issue of large language models, because due to the complexity, there's always a barrier to innovate in the space.
Well, I think we can give you a great round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure talking here, and thank you so much for the moderation.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions in the audience? Yeah, plenty of questions. And happy to see some faces coming back.
I would like to ask you about the intellectual property of the results of searching through
Bring it closer, please.
Intellectual property of first the results of the searching, and second, when I am teaching these LLMs, I can lose my additions to these LLMs as my intellectual properties.
Yeah, so this is a good point. So we have the searching already covered there, and it's also similar like searching for text. Though the model does not only have capabilities to generate, it has also capabilities to search. That means like we are plugged in our Sanofi databases for our compounds, as well as our building blocks, which helps also the model to pick actually the right pieces together and has an informed design. The cool thing is, and that's about the prediction capabilities, when you have already some measured data about a compound series that you can upload, the model can fetch it directly and can do a multi-shot prediction there. The prediction is not as good as a prediction that you would do with a data science team where somebody's fitting a custom model. However, it's good enough actually to generate in this space. And it makes a lot of sense also when you want to design a series where you don't know a lot of data, like you're starting or just transferring from another compound series. So in this zero-shot regime, the models are really performing well.
I think there's another question, yeah.
Two quick questions.
Yeah.
One, how do you ensure how do you assess adoption of that platform internally within the business? Because it's the hardest part. And quick second, you have many partners, and some of those are building the solutions for early drug discovery. How do you ensure synergy between that platform and the solutions, like third-party solutions from the market?
This is actually an excellent question. Yeah, adoption and change management is always a big topic when you are going into a new application world. For example, we are solving this with a high business engagement. The whole approach that we are presenting here is actually published with our business partners in ICML last year, and so they are already bought in since they came also with the idea, which is great. However, in order to ensure that a tool like this is operationalized, you need to change the processes also, and you need to provide trainings and a lot of education. A good thing is about this, it's an easy interface that you know from home, which I learned when we had the first trainings. The chemists are curious and they're actually pretty easy to work with it because you can just have a conversation. It's not like an application where you have billions of drop-down menus and you need to make a complex training on it. It's a simple training and you can experiment yourself, but of course, yeah, changing the processes is difficult. It's a young tool. We went to production a couple of months ago. We're starting right now the trainings. We have already our first experimental sessions with it, but it's going to be step-by-step rolled out in Sanofi everywhere where we want to have actually, where we have actually a chemistry problem. What was your second question? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Second question was regarding the synergy with the solutions from the partners, third-party platforms or LLMs or models.
Synergies, yeah. We have a lot of synergies and interfaces here. So at the main language model that we are using here in the background, we're having Claude 3.5. We are building on top of our AWS platform here. We're having also custom models. It's an agentic solution, so it's a solution where the LLM can call also smaller models, which is great to be more informed and get it in the context. We are also interfacing with chemistry tools. Also, because it's an agentic AI solution, you can build it more and more. That means like you can include more and more different tools, as well as also more interfaces to internal databases. As you are giving more context to the LLM, the prediction's getting also better. And that's kind of the thing. So it's a growing project. We're getting more and more interfaces, and we're always searching for synergies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other questions?
Thank you for your presentation. This topic is really incredible. And I have a question for you. So do you know how many percentage of molecules designed by AI successfully enter preclinical and clinical trials so far?
I would love to give you an answer here, but I don't have it actually. We just started with this, which means like we have already a couple of positive results, but we are just at the beginning. So this is something I think we need to measure. From the AI and generative journey, our chemists anyway are using heavily chemoinformatics tools, generative models. This is a completely new approach. This is a hybrid approach. I think the future will show actually when we are doing more and more evaluations and using it in more and more projects, how many of these molecules entering the preclinical phases. But I think in the future it will be almost every molecule will be somehow AI designed.
And I think there's one over here.
Thanks, Sven, for your talk. It was very insightful.
Bring it really close.
Yes, thanks for your talk. I have a small technical question, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Of course.
I have a doubt about how you make the AI understand the chemistry part. Do you change internally the structure of the LLM? How does it work?
We did not change the structure of the LLM. We actually we developed a new approach that we published last year. You can read the paper also afterwards. It's called Many-Shot and Context Learning for Molecular Inverse Design. We published it in ICML last year, where we created an in-context learning protocol to do many-shot predictions and then to do many-shot generations with the use of an LLM and smaller models that are trained on the data, where we're having an iterative feedback loop with the LLM and the smaller models guiding the design process actually. So it's kind of it's kind of really an agentic system where you have an agentic node who does this generation, which is also a system where you have an LLM which interacts with smaller models, which yield
Like a
that
mixture
the
of-
generative aspects, when you want to optimize for a lot of probabilities, are increasing over time. And that's something we could show in the paper. With this context, you can actually use the LLM to do the generation, and on the other hand, we created an in-context protocol with a lot of examples and a kind of a grammar in order to teach the LLM that it can understand this representation that I showed, this word kind of representation. Yeah. We are doing a second paper right now with experimental results with our partners that hopefully coming out in October this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. If you have other questions, Sven is over here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great applause again,
Thank
Sven.
you.
Thank you.
It was great speaking here.
Thank you very much again. And you stay a few minutes more if there are
Of
a few
course.
questions. Thank you and enjoy your journey here at Sanofi's booth. We're starting a next talk in about 14 minutes. Thank you.